Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Treading Warm Water, a proud part of the Bethel Clarion Podcast Network. As always, I'm your co-host Joe Heedy. With me alongside me, both of those combo of words. We have Josh Towner.
I'm all over the place.
He's all over the place. Today's special guest, Chris Moore.
Hey guys,
professor at Bethel University. Dr. Moore, go ahead and present your take.
I've been thinking about this. Here's my take. Millennials, they don't exist. Like not even a little bit. It's not real. They don't exist. Not like birds, but for real, millennials don't actually exist. Neither do boomers or Gen X or Gen Z. The whole thing's crap. It's all crap. Here's the thing. Generations don't exist. It's a false identity. There have been theories of what generations are for, I don't know, like 100 years. Carl Mannheim wrote about generations back in like the 1920s. Basically, he said that you could get a generation shaped by some kind of big historic event. So I would ask you guys, like, what's your big historic event? Did it really shape you? Was it really that big a part of your life? More recently, I gotta tell you, the origins of this take started back when I read a book by a couple guys, Strauss and Howe. They wrote a book called, wait for it, Generations. They wrote it in 91, and it's like a 500-page Chinese fortune cookie. Let me explain. Did you ever get a fortune cookie and you open it up and you read it and it's like good things are headed your way? And that could be true of anybody at any time in any kind of context, right? You read a horoscope and it's like, you will have opportunities to engage with new people this week. No, I won't. I'm stuck in my house with my family, right? But horoscopes are normally like they're written to be interpreted, to apply to everybody, and that's what this book reads like. What Strauss and Howe argued is there's basically throughout human history, we go through these cycles of 4 generations. Each one takes about 20 years. So add up 4 generations, you get about 80 years of life. And they kind of roughly correspond to what our current set of generations are, right? Boomers, Gen Xers, millennials, and then Gen Z, right? Boomers go from 43 to 60. They say that that's the high generation. They've emerged from a crisis and they're remaking the world in their image. Right? They're prophets. They're idealists. Gen Xers, they're the nomads, the reactions. They're sort of rejecting the boomer mentality. This is 61 to 81. Allegedly, I'm in here. But again, this is all crap. It doesn't exist. It's not real. And then you get the millennials. They're the unraveling. They're kind of dealing with the fallout of the fact that the boomers didn't get it right. And they're the heroes, whatever that means, right? And then we have the Gen Z, and interestingly, they don't call it Gen Z because they have to sell books, so they call it the Homeland generation. I don't know what that means, but they're the artists, right? They're sort of reacting to the midst of the crisis, and the whole thing breaks down. There's going to be some kind of massive societal crisis. Who knows what causes a crisis, right? Here's the deal: we're all identity hungry. We all want to belong to things. Joe's wearing a Twins hat, right? Joe, do you play for the Twins?
No, I don't. I wish I did.
I don't play for the Twins either, but I also have a Twins hat. I like to root for the Twins. If I saw somebody, if I was traveling in a different part of the country, if I was in New York or LA and I saw somebody with a Twins hat, I'd probably say something to them because there's kind of this sense of oh, we kind of like the same thing, which is really weird because if I was eating sushi and I saw someone else eating sushi, I wouldn't be like, hey, sushi, right? Yeah. It's a thing for us, right? But we build these false identities. We build these constructs, right? Whether it's Bethel or Vikings or being an American or being a generation, it's like Chinese fortune cookies. It's there because we believe it's there for ourselves. We're just telling ourselves this giant, stupid horoscope. You have way more in common with people of your same socioeconomic class or your gender or your ethnicity or your religion than anything to do with your generation. It's not real. And we need to stop talking about it like it is. That's my take.
So I just want to bring it back real quick. You had talked about what creates a crisis, and I wanted to say, a virus might create a crisis.
Potentially a global pandemic. But does it really? And here's the thing, right? If that's true, if a global pandemic causes everybody of a certain age to be utterly shaped by that crisis. Let's say that everybody who's like in middle school right now will grow up together being like, we were the virus generation. Are middle schoolers the ones who are really the most affected by the pandemic?
No, and that's a good point. I'm currently sitting at home with myself being a Gen Z, as they would say.
Actually, we're Homelanders, Joe. Sounds a lot cooler. Yeah, Dr. Moore said we're
myself
artists.
being a Homelander. Love it. We're artists. Yeah. Crazy. Love it. And a millennial brother and then a Gen X mom. Mm-hmm. We're all sitting at home right now. We're going through this together. Yeah. They're not experiencing it any different than I am.
Yeah.
Other than I don't have a full-time job, so I can sleep in a little bit later than they have to. But I think the generation thing, like people always say, oh, these are the definitions for you and your generation, and I never agree with it. I always think it's not true. I'm like, well, I fit in more with my brothers because I was raised with my brothers. It depends on who you're raised with and who's raising you. It's not your generation that shapes who you are. It's how you're raised. And I think that's with all things. It's who your parents and who your family is.
See, I think I agree with this theory in principle that when you really break it down, the generational labels they're just a farce, really. Yeah. But I think I'm okay with keeping them mostly because I think it's really fun to see people on Twitter say, okay, boomer. And then I also really enjoy the content that satirical news sites are able to mine from generational discussions.
And if that's all it is, if it's like this team identity thing, like we're going to spend some time making fun of the Lakers, or we're going to be making fun of, like, I don't know, Sully or something like that. Like, I think, like,
hey, we won't make fun of Sully. He's an American hero, especially when Tom Hanks portrays him in a feature-length film that neither Josh nor myself have seen.
Same, right? Yeah, I guess it's at that point, it's just like rooting for teams. It's like making fun of the Knicks or something like that. But it's not real. There's no real difference for millennials at the age that they are compared to Gen Xers when they were that age, or compared to boomers when they were that age. I mean, maybe if you have some kind of catastrophic world war that puts 20% of the whole generation in the draft, maybe that's some kind of societal effect. But come on, a virus, 9/11, the Challenger exploding, nah.
Yeah, I think unless you live through those things, like obviously we're all living through a pandemic right now, but we just debunked that theory. Unless you have somebody that, was murdered in 9/11, somebody that was connected to the Challenger issue, things like that, I don't think you really have an impact. But I think I agree with the fact that, like, going to war at the age of 17 or 18, that can definitely shape a generation and make you a lot different than, I don't know, maybe generations past or generations will be in the future. But I don't think these things that we think of as to be huge, like global things, I mean, really are they compared to, like, what could happen? I mean, a virus and staying inside for a couple months is a lot better than a nuclear war and, like, the fear of a nuclear war happening every other day. So yeah, I'm definitely all in on this with you.
Did you guys know, I'm looking at everybody's favorite informational source, wikipedia.org right now. I'm finding that under Generation X is sometimes called the baby bust generation.
Well, that sounds terrible.
It does, but I'm wondering why we didn't keep it more. Like in 20 years, are we going to be able to say, okay, Buster on Twitter?
What if you already say Buster?
It's like, even worse than that is Strauss and Howe say that the Gen X is actually called the 13th generation, which sounds like a bad, like, Van Damme movie, right?
The 13th generation, probably a follow-up to, what was that movie, The Fifth Wave?
Exactly. Yep.
This is an interesting theory. Can I ask, how did you think of this?
So I'm in a book club with some former Bethel students, and when we first started the book club, everyone had an interest in like flexing. So everyone assigned each other like the worst possible books to read, and it was just a slog. And this was like one of the first like 5 books that we read, and I've hated it ever since. And like, it was supposed to convince me that generations were like this real important thing to consider. And I've just become just committed to the idea that the whole thing is bunk.
Yeah, I think I agree. When I get serious and don't look at just like satirical news and the OK Boomer memes, I find myself getting really angry at pretty much any op-ed that's like millennials killed this, and I'm like, well, that's not true. Chalk it up to the internet killing, brick and mortar stores. Why are you calling it to millennials, a group of people? I think what bothers me the most about the generation gap is that there's no real divide between them. And it's like, all right, well, if you're born in 96, you're a millennial, but 97, you're Gen Z. Like, there's no real divide there for me. It's like, I'm close enough to where it's like, we're close enough to where like I could be a millennial and Joe could be a Gen Z, and there's no real discernible difference between the two of us and how we operate, really.
Okay, yeah, so we like the same stuff. We were probably raised watching the same TV shows, except Josh didn't watch SpongeBob because he wasn't allowed, because he's not allowed to have a fun childhood. But yeah, I think the content and things that you're submerged in. I mean, we both experienced technology around the same time. We both started driving around the same time. I mean, a year difference. What does that really matter? Like, we went to high school. Like, if me and Josh were both in high school, we'd be a couple grades apart. Like, I don't think.
Did you go to high school?
No, I didn't actually. My last 2 years, I graduated with my associate's degree. Small class, graduated with my bachelor's at 20 in a week.
Joe got fast-tracked into a chemistry program to help produce vegan meatballs, actually.
Yeah, they actually just like examined my organs for a couple of weeks, and then I got paid a certain amount of money, $5, no big deal. Yep. But yeah, I mean, I think generations are an easy way for people to keep grouping people.
This is what you guys have is a perfect example of why this whole thing is garbage, because I'm the same boat as you. I'm just 20 years older. So I'm on the cusp between being a Gen Xer and a millennial on the front end of millennials. Yeah. And I had a friend who's the same age as me tell me, oh, I'm not a millennial or a Gen Xer. I'm a Zennial. I'm like, that sounds like a floral species.
That's worse.
I know. It's like,
I'd rather be a baby buster.
I'm like, I'm part of this mini generation of like 6 years in between Generation X and Y. Like, we're so hungry to find an identity for ourselves. We'll give ourselves any label we can come up with, including our birth year. It's nonsense. It's utter nonsense.
Wait, so there's like subsections in between the already.
I guess what's the thing between a Z and a millennial? Like, what's the name for that? If the thing between Gen X and millennial is Zennial, I don't know. Is there
be something cool like the Cobra Kings? Because I want to be a Cobra King. That would be dope. All right,
I'm actually part of the subset generation, the Cobra Kingers.
Yep.
Let's go around the table, see where everybody's out. See where everybody's at. Towner, I'll let you start.
I mean, aside from OK Boomer, I don't really see any reason for us to continue this farcical idea of having named generations in the Western world.
I myself hate the fact that people try to group me into generations, because a lot of times Gen Z is grouped as being a very lazy generation, when I myself am graduating with my bachelor's after 2 years of going to college out of high school. I work very hard. I work just about full time. I go to school full time, and I'm doing this so that I can set myself up in life. Not having anybody help me with school, paying my way through. So the fact that I have people at work say, "Oh, you're just a lazy Gen Zer," really gets under my skin. So I'm 100% on board with you on this one, Dr. Morris. This is a fantastic take, and I'm glad we had you on. I'll let you have a closing statement here.
Thanks, man. I think at the end of the day, this is all just like a perverse version of Hallmark card holidays. We're just trying to come up with some way of identifying ourselves, some team name, so we can sell stuff to each other. And that's not a good reason to have these things. Let's get rid of them.
I want to say one more quick thing that you guys just made me think of. I think with getting to like Gen Z, I think part of why Joe and I were so eagerly disgusted by this is because we are given a lot of content that's generation based. And I think that a group identity is less appealing in the digital age than an individual identity. And I think that's a lot of why people are starting to turn on the idea of generations. At least in this podcast, we are.
All right,
Well,
guys. Thanks for hearing me out.
Yeah, no problem. That'll do it for this episode of Treading Warm Water. We appreciate you listening, whether it's on YouTube, Spotify, or iTunes. As always, stay safe, stay healthy. We'll see you guys on the next one.